our man James Ham here from the Insiders. James, we were just marveling over the incredible state that the Houston Rockets are in. Now, granted, they're down 0-1 in their series against Golden State. I like the Warriors in that series. We were looking at different players, saying maybe DeMar DeRozan is a nice fit for Houston. And then we stumbled upon the Fred VanVleet contract that's a club option, noting they could pick up the option with the idea of trading $45 million to land a big player of a player they don't even want.
Yeah, Houston's in a good spot. They also have a bunch of draft picks and a ton of young talent that isn't even remotely close to their ceiling yet.
Yeah.
So yeah, that they're OKC part 2. That's what it looks like at this point. And for right now, I think they've got a really good mixture of veterans and young players. And, like whether that's going to be enough to get them out of the first round of the playoffs, I don't know. The way the playoffs work is always very specific. You kind of got to go in, take your lumps the first time, and see how that goes. You usually get beat up on in the first time you get to the playoffs. Sometimes you make it to the second round, but overall, it's usually a pretty big process of going first round, second round, and then who knows where. But that team is super well built and has a bright future.
One of the trades we were talking about, potential trades we were talking about, was because Houston kind of came up because I watched them last night and I wonder if DeMar DeRozan would be a good spot, a landing spot for them. He kind of changes the game a little bit. I understand that with the whole mid-range thing, but they have enough defenders on that roster where you could kind of hide DeMar in that aspect. And I don't think you'd be scoring 34 points and a half if you had somebody like DeMar DeRozan that could get you a bucket, get to the line, and all this other stuff. One of the names that was brought up on the Sacramento side of it all, though, was, would you trade DeMar DeRozan for Dillon Brooks?
Yeah, probably. I'm not a Dillon Brooks fan. I actually, like I said earlier today, like I wouldn't want to go into the Dillon Brooks business. But at the same time, he's younger. He's a much better defender. His jump shot doesn't go in like DeMar's, but he can shoot the three. He'll take a few more threes. He does bring an attitude and all that stuff. I mean, that's always, it's tough because I just don't like the antics. And I don't think, like there are antic players out there, but I don't think his actually have a positive influence on the court. So like Draymond Green is filled with crazy antics and motivational tactics that he uses. But his team's also won 4 championships and are, moving along right now and could be a surprise 7 seed that advances in the second round, where Dillon Brooks is somebody who agitates and sometimes it just has a really negative effect on his team.
Is DeMar the most tradable asset that the Kings have? Does he have the most trade value for Sacramento?
Well, no, I mean, Keegan Murray still has way more trade value. I'd say even Malik Monk has more trade value because Malik's got 3 years left on his contract, although the last year is a team option. Oh, no, the last year's a player option. Yeah, when I look at like what do the Kings have to offer? I mean, Devin Carter there might be a group of people out there that would love to get their hands on Devin Carter. I don't know. But DeMar is he's sort of the guy if you can't find someone to take on like Zach LaVine's contract, which I don't think the Kings can find somebody, nor do I think they want to find somebody to take on that contract. But if you can't, I mean, I think we can all agree that the best thing is to probably split up those two. So I think DeMar DeRozan is the most movable, like big money contract the Kings have. And, maybe, well, I would even say more movable than probably Malik Monk at this point, just because DeMar's got 1 year left, but then there's a $10 million buyout for the final year. And that's a pretty good contract for what you're going to get. I mean, he's still going to walk in and average close to 20 points per game. And if you're a team that just struggles to score, I would say it's not only a team like Houston, but a team like Orlando. they could really use like another scorer, a team like the Lakers, a team like the Miami Heat. All of these groups might look at, a way to find another scoring option, and the Kings might be looking to find just better fit type players.
A quick follow-up. Are we confident Keegan Murray still has a good level of value?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the worry that anyone would have is that you're going to have to go out and pay him. This offseason, he's extension eligible, but if not this offseason, then next offseason, you could always make him a restricted free agent and try to figure out what his value is on the open market. But yeah, I think Keegan Murray still has plenty of value. He's an exceptional defender. He's a guy that could start for a championship team. He's just not at this point going to be your first or second or probably even third option on a really good team. But in the right situation, he might find himself, becoming the scorer that he should have been in Sacramento.
I'm just looking at some of these guys that it's real specific, like the same amount of years left on the contract. 20, anywhere between $20 to $25 million per year on the contract. It's a matchup with DeRozan. You're seeing guys, Andrew Wiggins makes 27 a year. RJ Barrett, 26. Obviously, you've got your Dylan Brookses, Kyle Kuzma, DeAndre Hunter, KCP, guys like that. Do you think they'd be able to get any of those type of players in a trade for DeMar DeRozan? Or would it have to be, maybe two guys that have lesser salaries, or maybe even lesser players? You think like a player for player type swap might be able to work, or do they have to come down on that asking price a little bit?
No, I think the Kings can find a taker out there for DeMar DeRozan's contract. I think you can also, we can talk about adding contract value to that. I mean, sacrilegious, but you want to throw Jonas Valanciunas' contract, all of a sudden you're up to $34 million in $34.5 million in contract. And that means you can go, well above 40 million to take a player back. There are a lot of ways in which the Kings can improve their roster this season. I know it seems pretty bleak when, again, they won the coin flip today. I don't know if you saw that. They did win the coin flip. Mm-hmm. So they're the 13th pick in the draft. Of course, if they stay at 13, it goes directly to the Atlanta Hawks. If they somehow move up, they get to keep it. But I think that a lot of people just like instantly think, okay, well, their offseason is doomed. If the only thing they have is a second round pick and they don't really have, you don't really have a bunch of players that you can trade. You do have some players, but again, there's actually value to having like a $8 million Trey Lyles contract when he's under contract. Once he's no longer under contract, you can't trade him for that $8 million worth of salary. And so I think that there are ways in which they've kind of hampered themselves because they don't have quote unquote like trade assets, right? But they will have things like the mid-level exception this summer, which is going to be, I think it's over 13 million this year. So you are going to have other ways in which you can add talent. You'll have the biannual exception. You'll have trades that you can pull off where you trade future draft capital. So I don't think it's all doom and gloom. But, the right vision and sort of the right conversations can get you a long way in rebuilding this thing pretty quickly. And I think that they're pushed to build a roster right now around Domantas Sabonis, or to just call it quits and say, hey, we're going to have to trade Domas, and that means we should probably trade a couple other guys and start over. I think that their first attack is going to be to go out and try to build the roster around Domas.
Who's the ideal player or ideal type of player to build around Domantas Sabonis? Like what puts Domas in the best position to be great?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's been like the long athletic shooter. Like you need more. If you could clone Keegan Murray and make two of them, you would actually that's the type of player that you need. You need more of, the Cam Johnson type player. What you need is guys that are athletic, that can defend, that can shoot the three. And I don't think that it's that difficult to find those players. I don't understand why the Monty and West tandem couldn't find those players, because every other team finds them. Like, there are a bunch of 6'6" to 6'9" athletic, long defensive minded 3-point shooting wings right now in the NBA. There just are. Look at every team that the Kings face. You're like, oh, that guy's going to be a problem, because they don't have those style of players. And so I think that's sort of like the first line of attack, is just surround him with players that play the game the right way, that are defensive minded. Jake LaRavia can be part of that, but again, he should be the third or fourth forward for you in a rotation. You find a point guard that's long and athletic and that can shoot the three. Again, he doesn't have to be like the world's best setup man. He just has to be competent and know how to play the position. And so I think that they can build around him pretty quickly.
So I'm looking at Bobby Marks's end of the season, just kind of what the 49ers, what the Kings have in front of them. And help me with this, James. I feel like much like the NFL salary cap, I ask you this every year how this works out. So they talk about the trade exceptions. He says a 16.8, a 6.3, a 5.9, 4.7. They have 4 trade exceptions.
Yeah, they have 4 trade exceptions, but they can't be combined.
You can use them in separate deals.
You can use them in the same trade for separate players and even on separate teams. So you can send again, let's say the 16 million, you can send that for a player that makes below that number. It has to be below that number. Then you could throw in, say, the Sasha Vezenkov deal at 6.5 or whatever. But that can be used to acquire a different player, and you can mix and match. But what it can't be used to do is say, I have a $16.5 million and I have a $6.5 million, so I can go acquire $23 million in player. Like, you can't acquire one player. You have to acquire multiple through different trade options and stuff. But yeah,
real quick, can you use DeMar and the trade exception? Or just the trade exception has to be by itself. No players with it.
You can use DeMar and a trade exception, but not for a player that makes more than DeMar's salary. Okay, so you can go up or down 20. I think it's 25% from DeMar's salary, right? So let's just say he makes 25 million. So roughly, I don't know, you can go up to, let's just say 30 million is a good round figure, right? It might even be like 32 million with DeMar. So you could acquire a player that makes 32 million or less. But then if there's a package deal where you have another player that's thrown in, you can sort of trade exception to acquire that player to go over that figure. So it gets pretty complicated, but also, like, remember, the Kings also have their mid-level exception, which means that they can use that as a trade option as well, and they can do that all the way up until the trade deadline. So they can go and acquire a $14 million player or $13 million, whatever the trade exception is this year. So the other thing is oh, my brain just went sideways. All these numbers and people throwing numbers in the chat.
I'm gonna make it way worse, James.
Yep, I'm here.
Can you explain Keon's contract situation this offseason?
Yeah. Okay. So the Kings have 2 choices with Keon. Keon. There we go. The first option is to just,
James's head is still in Easter break. He's still in Truckee right now. It's all right, James. We got you.
You can just pick up a 3rd-year option, the option year on Keon Ellis's contract, and he's your player. But it's for nothing. It's a league minimum deal, like $2.2 million. So if we get to the end of of the next season, though, Keon Ellis would be an unrestricted free agent. You can try to re-sign him. You can use like whatever, you have Larry Bird rights to him. You can go above the salary cap to sign him, right? But he's an unrestricted free agent, which means anyone in the league can sign him as well. And he can go wherever he wants without needing a passport, basically. So the other way that you can do this summer is that you can decline his option year for next year. And what that does is it makes him a restricted free agent this summer, which means you can sign him to a lucrative contract, or he can go out and he can sign an offer sheet somewhere, and then you can match or not match. So it gives you more options for Keon. And I think at this point, you would also like to pay Keon more money than the league minimum. He's worth more than that. Now, how much more he's worth than that, I don't know. I don't know if he's going to get a 3-year 24 or a 3-year 36. Whatever. Keon might get plenty of money in the on free agent market, but there isn't a ton of money to be had out there. And Keon Ellis, while is a fun young player, and I think a very, very good up and coming player, there's also like how high up a list of priority is he going to be for another team out there, and you just don't know. But for me, like I would be concerned with the Keon Ellis situation, just like I'd be concerned with the Keegan Murray situation. Like, because when you have a front office that finds a diamond in the rough as an undrafted free agent in Keon Ellis, and who spends a number 4 pick on a guy like Keegan Murray, they have a certain attachment to those players. When you have those guys depart, whether they're fired or they just decided to go to Utah for some reason, whatever the reason, you're handing your franchise over to a different person who has a different view on each of those players and is going to have a different value on those players. So there's going to be some input. If Doug Christie's still the head coach, he would have some input. Guys like Alvin Gentry, if they're still around, he'll have input. Guys like Vivek and maybe Angeli will have input on whether they would like to see those players retained or not. But there's always going to be a different feel with a player when you drafted him or you found him than when somebody else did, and their residuals from somebody else's roster that you may or may not want to push forward with.
My bad. Completely understandable. You talk about Keon and declining the option and him becoming a restricted free agent potentially. Wouldn't that, you mentioned the options it gives you, but also wouldn't that allow you to let the league set his market? And so maybe in certain aspects it prevents you from overpaying for a guy that maybe you feel good about. But that also goes back to your other point of the guys that feel good about him aren't here. This is a completely different regime, so they wouldn't have the emotional attachment that they may have had previously to overpay for him. But if you decline that option and becomes a restricted free agent, the league will set the market for who they think he is.
No, I totally agree. It's a dangerous game that the Kings are playing with this. Again, if they just go into this offseason and say, hey, we're going to pick up your option year, number one, I actually think that would kind of put a bad taste in Keon's mouth, because they're saying, hey, we're going to get you cheap one more year. And then the Kings can sit there and try to work out a contract extension all season long, but it's going to be based off of $2 million this year, as opposed to, so say he opts out, or you opt out of that deal and then you give him a 3-year 24. Well, in year one, he just made an extra $6 million. So this is where you have to be very careful. Now, what you don't want to do is have him opt out of his deal, and then have someone come through with like a 3-year, $51 million deal at $17 million a year. And now you're sitting there like, oh, what do we do? Now you've got to make a decision, because Keon Ellis is fun and he's awesome when he makes $2 or $3 million a year. Once he starts making, this is the same thing that I think Malik Monk is dealing with right now.
They turn on you quick, Keon.
Once you start making $20 million a year, last year was 17. This next year it'll be like 18 and a half or 19 for Malik. Like Malik, I don't think he's a starter, but maybe he's a starter. I don't think he's a true point guard. Maybe he can start at the 2, but you just traded for Zach LaVine. So all of a sudden, that contract doesn't look nearly as good as it did the day you signed it. when he was just this flamethrower off the bench and everyone was happy with it. But that again was when you had De'Aaron Fox as your starting point guard. And, when you didn't have $40 million wrapped up in your shooting guard position, or 46 next season, in Zach LaVine. So again, things change so quickly in the league. But again, Keon Ellis is a great young player. I think, teams would be crazy to let him go. The Kings would be crazy to let him go. So you got to figure out ways to manage that. But again, that's because I've watched Keon his whole career, and Scott Perry hasn't watched Keon his whole career.
Sorry,
I was going to say, in that scenario you laid out, I mean, I love Keon too. $18 million a year for Keon Ellis. If that's the going rate, you kind of feels like you
can afford that chain he wears.
Right.
Well, you just don't know.
Be like,
right?
Man.
Yeah, but then what do you do?
Well, you got Devin Carter. And I mean that seriously. Like, Devin Carter does a lot of the things that Keon does, and you kind of hope his development gets to the point, because I think Keon's a better player today. But I could see Devin Carter jumping into that role of Keon, and you hope that you have a development jump from Devin Carter from year 1 to year 2, and he could kind of play that role of Keon if Keon is gone.
Yeah, look, I don't know what Keon's gonna get. I got to be honest. I just, as a player, I like Keon Ellis a lot more than I like Devin Carter. Again, Devin's a really good rebounder, and he might be a little bit better off the ball. I'm on the ball, taking the ball to the basket. But I just think Keon knows his role, and Devin's not going to know his role for a couple of years if he ever learns what his role is. There's a lot of value to having a 25-year-old guy who, is the same player today as he was in college, and just gets better at doing what he did in college. And I think Keon continues to improve. It's just, he kind of gets gobbled up in the whole mess of this season. There are a lot of times late in the season where Keon started, taking people off the dribble and getting creative, trying to get to the middle of the key and using his floater. And I was like, hey, if this is who he can be, he can average 12, he can average 14 points a game. Why not? Especially with the way he shoots it. So, I don't know.
Do you feel like who you said you've ever seen every game of Keon's career? Do you feel like who he is as a player?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think, again, people bring up names in the chat, but I think he's got Kentavious Caldwell-Pope potential, Herb Jones potential. He's not the high flyer that, some of these guys are, but look, this is a lockdown 3-and-D defender who shoots 42% from 3, and it's consistent. And it's been for a couple of years now. We've seen the same exact thing. What I like about Keon is he's not a hungry mouth to feed. This team always does this thing where they go out and they get more mouths to feed on the offensive end. And Keon just does his job. He's a floor spacer. If you gave him an extra 3-3-pointers a game, he's going to average an extra 1 or 2 points a game, or more than that. He's going to average, well, I can do math. He's going to average 4.5 more points per game. And that's just off a couple of extra threes, because that's where he shoots it. So, yeah, I mean, Keon is he's not Herb Jones because he's the shooting guard version of, but look at great teams over the course of the last, couple of decades that have players like this that are just so incredibly impactful. So, we brought up Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, which, was a very, very good player for Denver. But it's not just that. I mean, look at how long Danny Green made a career in the NBA, and, guys that just know their job, to play defense, to take the toughest cover, and then to hit big shots when they're sent out to them. And for me, I would keep Keon, not at all costs. I mean, because there is something called salary cap, but certainly, for a good deal of money.
All right, hold that thought. I know James is going to cook. You're going to cook. We'll come back. We'll talk more postmortem Kings basketball here with our insider from the Insiders. It's James Ham with D1KC on Sacramento Sports Leader, ESPN 1320. Almost Kenny and James this thing.
Uh-oh.
Got up and walked out. Man.
Uh-oh.
Feel the same way. I'm back on my water kick now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I've been working to get back in good shape.
Oh, man. That always looks painful. Watching a baseball game. It's the foul ball off the. Oh, he hit it off the back shin.
Yeah, we got a lot of people in here. You guys hit the thumbs up for us if you don't mind.
You see Manny Machado hit a foul ball off his toe, and then I think like the next pitch hit it off his foot again.
Oh, man.
That's the worst.
No, you know how that goes. They hit it off their foot. You know that next pitch is coming on the inside corner.
It's like when you bite your lip and then all of a sudden you bite it like 3 more times. Bite your tongue. Yeah, I wanted to pull this up. Russell, I don't hate Devin Carter because he tries to score. I don't hate Devin Carter, but I do think that he's going to take a long time to figure out who he is at the NBA level. And part of that is his game, but also part of that is his personality. Like the one thing I thought he would do was rebound coming into the league. And I got to, there's been times where you're like, oh, did you see that rebound? But then you look at his stats at the end of the year and, they're not great. Per 36, I guess 6.9 per 36 isn't horrible. But, there are way too many games where he had like 1 and 2 rebounds. 2.1 rebounds per game in his 11 minutes.
John Pauls, nobody cares about UCLA. Watch your damn mouth. You heard what Michigan said. He asked if I watched the spring game. I didn't, but shout out to my Michigan for watching the spring game. Nobody gives a damn about UCLA football.
Not to kill the bit, but they did get that quarterback, huh? From Tennessee, Nico something.
They did to get Nico. That was a crazy little situation.
I thought he was going to North Carolina at first. That's how they were reporting it.
Yeah, they had it at North Carolina. Tulane had gotten that in that mix.
How the hell does Tulane have money?
Bro, I'm telling you. Tulane had gotten the mix. And UCLA got him. That's right. Whoa. Hey, Jesse, get your boy. Get your boy, man. Hey,
yeah, John
relax.
Pauls. Nah, relax, Pauls. Relax.
That is not,
Hey.
that is not what you say.
Hey.
Yikes.
Guess John Pauls has his own way of going about things.
It's like I just do a flag on Isaiah Stewart right now.
Rustock, there's no reason for Doug Christie to ever ask me to be on his coaching staff. I'm not an NBA coach. I'm not an NBA assistant coach. I've never coached basketball at all. Now, Scott Perry wants to call. Yes, I'm in.
NBA executive James Ham.
That's like what's his name in Atlanta?
No, well, I don't know. We'll see how that thing worked out.
He wasn't. Well, yeah,
I don't think we know yet.
But what's his name? What's the guy who was on the Warriors podcast?
Yeah, Grant Liffman.
Yeah.
My guy Grant. He's a good dude. But he was very close with their GM that just got fired, so I don't know what that means. I could probably find out.
Oh, Landry Fields.
There's other media guys that have gotten GM jobs, right?
John Hollinger.
Jesus Christ. Was John Hollinger a media guy first? Or was he a front office guy who became a media guy?
He created that thing.
That's right.
PER. Yeah, PER.
I like Jameis Ramsey.
Yeah. James, what did you think about Travis Scott's involvement at WrestleMania?
Tragic.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we thought, James.
You have
I had a few options there.
no, you have no idea how accurate that is.
Yeah.
Damn good take right there.
Yeah. Yeah. See, like Dirk here in the chat, he brings up Kaminga.
Hang on, Hammer. Hang on, Hammer.
Right.
Yeah, well, James just got the classic Jesse cutoff.
He couldn't even hear me. That was just you guys that could hear me.
Yeah, he's right in the middle. Right in the middle. I don't know if what you were going to respond to was Kings related or we were just talking during the commercial break.
No, it was Kings related. So like, I think this is a good, like when we're looking at like the value of Keon, the value of Devin Carter and all that stuff. I think it's kind of reminds me of the two players that the Warriors have right now, where one of them is, Jonathan Kuminga, and he's out of the rotation in the playoffs. And then the other is like Moses Moody, who's in the rotation and playing. And I think we all can agree that Jonathan Kuminga probably has a much higher ceiling, right, than Moses Moody. But Moses Moody knows his role and does exactly what he's supposed to do. Now, does he make mistakes? Yeah, he makes mistakes. They both make mistakes, but Kuminga's mistakes are more glaring. He doesn't play the same style of basketball as the rest of his team, and so that becomes an issue. And that's where I would kind of compare like the potential of Devin Carter and who Keon Ellis is. You know who Keon Ellis is. We know exactly who he is. He can start, he can come off the bench, he can play the 1 and the 2. Probably not your best option as a point guard just because he's not a pure creator or anything else, but he's a very good NBA player that is going to be in the league for a long time doing exactly what he does. Where Devin Carter is going to be searching and trying to prove who he is still for a couple of years. And that's because, he still thinks of himself as a lottery pick. He's a guy that probably would have gone higher than number 13 if it wasn't for the shoulder injury. All of these things that like his dad played in the league, all of these things that would make you believe that he thinks, pretty highly of himself as a basketball player. And, here we are like a couple of years into Kuminga's career, and you're still waiting for this moment where everything makes sense, and it still doesn't, which is why he's not playing. And then you've got, a guy like Moses Moody. It's like, hey, this is who I am and what I do. It's much easier for that player to fit into a role in the NBA than it is for a guy like Kuminga or Devin Carter. That's all.
No, I get you on that. And the correlation between Moses Moody and Kuminga is one of like maybe Devin Carter and Keon Ellis. What is the number? I'll ask both of you guys this. What is the number you would set for Keon Ellis? Say you did the thing where you decline the option. He's a restricted free agent. And my first thought was, it was like, all right, 15 would be the number, right? But I'm looking at some of these guys that are at 17, 18, 19. Malik is at 19. That's where I'll put the cap at it, right? Like at 19. But Keldon Johnson's 18 and a half. Grayson Allen's 17 and a half. Bogey is 17. Luke Dort, 16 and a half. Like, that Grayson Allen one, like, if Grayson Allen making 17 and a half, it feels like Keon should be making, or I wouldn't sneeze at having to pay Keon $17, $18 million a year. It kind of, I say that to say, it kind of feels like that's the going rate for a guy like Keon. But what's the max you might put that at, James?
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot for me. So I know Herb Jones' contract, he makes 13 this year, 14 next, and 15 the year after. That, I would hope that if you opt out, you opt out of his deal, but with the understanding that you're going to try to bring him back for a better, a much better contract, that you might be able to work out like a 4-year 32 or a 4-year 36. It might cost you a 4-year 48 or maybe even a little bit more than that. But I think that that's kind of where I would hope to start. because again, you are going to make that extra $6 million in the first year. So it's kind of like a baseball player when you're buying out arbitration years. Like Lawrence Butler signed a 7-year deal, and it looks like this huge deal, but he doesn't make a lot of money the next couple of years, and then he makes pretty much what he was going to make as an arbitration eligible player. Like they basically cashed out his 2 arbitration years and then got him for an extra 2 years after that. So the whole package looks really good, but realistically, you're giving him more money today. So he's not, making $600K a year for the next 3 years before his arbitration years. But in order to do that, they have to give a whole bunch of money back in years, 5, 6, 7.
There's rumors there's a press conference tomorrow, but to the best of my knowledge, that actually hasn't been announced. Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna have a press conference the next day or two. I've got to try to work out job situation with us here at ESPN 1320. So it's like, hey, we might have a press conference tomorrow. We might have one on Wednesday. But that's just planning purposes. For right now, the Kings, there's one in the works, and it will be in the next day or two.
Okay, so no hangups, no issues. Scott Perry is the general manager of the Sacramento Kings. They're just waiting for the big formal announcement. We expect it to be sometime within the next handful of days.
I last night on Sports Sunday, actually this wasn't on Sports Sunday. No.
This was when Kenny was at home playing Sports Center on TV.
No,
we were
all there, but this was not on Sports Sunday. So
okay.
I'll leave it alone. I went back and checked something, and same thing happened before. You remember what somebody told us when we were off the air about the press conference?
Yeah.
Same thing happened before.
Okay.
So it's not new news, I guess.
Oh.
It was during COVID times though too, so maybe that played a role.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about that, and I was like, yeah, we talked about it. I was like, no, we didn't. Not publicly. Sorry about that.
No, we did not. Hammer, anything stand out about the game ones that we watched over the weekend? Anyone get your attention? I asked if Oklahoma City, Boston, maybe even Cleveland put some people on notice, and these two guys were like, no, not at all. Memphis sucks.
I think we all realized very quickly that you wanted no part of that buzzsaw that is Oklahoma City Thunder. The Kings would have been, it might not have been 50, but it probably would have been 35.
Yeah, it would have been more respectable.
Damn 50.
We only lose regular season games to the Thunder by 40.
Yeah, I mean, that team right there is so incredibly well built, and they have so many options at every position, and they're the deepest team, and they still have a ton of draft picks, and they still have plenty of cap flexibility. But we were talking earlier, they have 12 guys under contract next year, and their salary is at 172. They're so well off financially, because think of it this way: the salary, the luxury tax this year set it at 172 million. The salary cap is going to go up between 17 and 18 million next year. So that means that the luxury tax also goes up 17 or 18 million. So as of right now, for next season, they are literally 17 or 18 million under the luxury tax, not the apron, not anything else, under the luxury tax. And all of their players are they're under contract. So, I mean, that team is just so set up for success over the next 5 years. That is crazy.
Now, it doesn't matter because these are great problems to have, but that's about to change because SGA is about to he's making, I think, 35 now. I mean, we're looking at mid 50s to 60s with the next one. And Chet should be eligible for a contract extension because he's the same year as Keegan. So he should be eligible as well.
Shea is under contract for the next 2 years, one at 38, one at 40.8. Chet is under contract next year, and then the year after is a qualifying offer year. He'll get an extension next year, but yeah, they're
What's
at 100.
the difference between him and Keegan? just question, like, because we talk about a Keegan extension this summer, but Chet still has. It's because did Chet not get that year of service because he didn't play? Did that
No,
happen?
he did. He has a year of service. Yeah, no, he's eligible for an extension this summer, but it doesn't kick in until the year after that.
Got you.
Yeah, so if they're extension eligible, like right now, like Keegan will be extension eligible this season. That's not for next season's salary; it's for the year after, and that's what makes the Keon Ellis situation so complicated, because you have him for $2 million next year if you want, and you can try to work out a long-term contract extension that kicks in after next year, but he also, if you're going to go that route, he's going to be unrestricted. So if you fail to get that contract extension, then you're in trouble. He'll just walk for nothing. Now that's why you have to look at whether you want to opt out and then start paying some of the money up front. The other thing I wanted to point out earlier, which is when my brain went sideways, is that the Kings, they hard capped themselves last year, but that's over. July 1st, it's over. So they're no longer hard capped at a specific, they don't have to worry about the first apron, the second apron. Like if they go into those, they've got to pay, but they're no longer hard capped because it's a 1-year penalty for doing a sign in trade. And so again, once July 1st hits, that sort of just dissolves and goes away.
Was the sign and trade DeMar?
Yeah.
I always forget like the exact parameters of the game. Was it shedding salary, getting here, signing, or signing there, executing the trade, shedding salary? All right, I got it. That's why signing trades, like people throw around, do a sign and trade. It's so uncommon now. It used to be a lot more common. It's so uncommon now because I don't want to call them, I mean, I guess to a certain degree they're penalties, but the parameters are significantly stricter than they were 15 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very much like it's extremely difficult to pull off a sign and trade. And I think if it pushes you over the luxury, over the salary cap, the sign and trade does, then it triggers the hard cap. And so, yeah, it's just not good business to do it repeatedly. Now, again, if the Kings find some guy that they just fall in love with this offseason and pull off another sign and trade and hard cap themselves again, that's fine. I haven't even sat down and really gone over the numbers for the Kings and what their salary cap looks like for next season. So, again, we still don't know if they'll ever pay the tax because they're not going to pay the tax this year. But, and they probably still have a little bit of money to get below before whether they're going to pay the tax or not. Their salary for next season is 160.1. But that's with like not a whole lot of guys under contract. That's 7 guys under contract. So that'll put them, probably they should be below the salary cap.
Are there cap holds on guys like Trey and Keon and those guys or no?
Well, there's a cap hold on a guy like Trey, but I think it's like 150% of his salary, so like 12 million. So, but the Kings can just waive the cap hold. They can just waive the right to that cap hold and move on. They can also waive that and then come back later and sign him using like the biannual exception, which is like almost $5 million, and you can do 2-year deal. So there are ways around all of that. But the biggest problem that they're going to have is, again, like Keon Ellis's like cap hold would only be like maybe 2.5-3 million. It's nothing. Oh, it's 2.3 million. That's the team option for next year is 2.3 million. So his cap hold is probably a little bit bigger than that.
I mean, and then we'll still have that age-old question, depending on what moves they make. Is this team worth going into the tax for? That's the one we're always worried about. And, one of the things that frustrated people on Friday was seeing Davion Mitchell perform the way he did in that Miami Heat playing game against Atlanta. And one of the reasons, or you can tell me, Ham, if I'm correct with this, but one of the reasons he wasn't here in Sacramento is because he had to be moved to get under the cap. If that's the case, that's a little frustrating because you ask the question, what team would you be willing to pay into the tax for?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying last year's team was looked at to be a championship team, but you would look at that team and be like, hey, this should be a good team. I would go a little bit into the tax for it. And if Davion isn't here because they didn't want to go into the tax, that's disappointing.
Well, a couple of things on Davion. Number one, I just think that they were over the Davion experience. They also knew that they were going in. They'd picked up his 4th-year option, and they're going into this 4th-year option, and now they're going to have to pay him. So he's a restricted free agent after this season. He didn't sign an extension last summer, so he's going to go into this offseason as a restricted free agent, and Miami will have to decide what they're willing to pay and match. The other thing with Davion is that trade in itself was really more about Sasha. They were trying to find Davion just a spot to go to, and then they were able to dump Sasha's, $12-13 million salary. The problem was that then he walked away from that salary and just went back to Europe. And the Kings gave up a couple of second-round picks to do it. I've said this to you guys a million times, and I mentioned it earlier with Kyle. Like, we joke around about, remember the Hassan Whiteside stuff. You guys used to say, I hate Hassan, or I hate JaVale McGee. And I think a lot of people, they think I hate Davion Mitchell. And I kept saying this exact thing. If he gets into the right situation to place a right style of offense for him, he has every opportunity to be a really good NBA player. And all of a sudden, he's in the right situation. It is an isolation game. It's a totally different style. It's not a flow offense. It's not a read and react offense. It's a very specific type of offense. And he's just totally flourishing. Now, has he just blown up the entire time he's been in Miami? No. Like, he's had ups and downs like he did anywhere else, but I still think he can be an exceptional player, especially someone who plays defense like that. And I even made the argument to Kyle, like, this Kings team this season is more like what Davion Mitchell, the style of offense that he would thrive in. But that's not the offense that you went into the season thinking you were going to have. And so it makes sense to not have him here. And, again, to find someone who's different than him. But, overall, I think, again, Davion's a hard worker. He's a good kid. And in this situation, he's finding a perfect home for himself and also making a whole lot of money, because you can bank on yourself in this situation and say, well, look, I'm not going to take a low level extension, or I'm just going to go into this season knowing I'm a restricted free agent, and I'm going to lay it all out there. And at the end of the day, I think Davion's quickly, looking more and more like the Kyle Lowry type player that we thought he might turn into, than just the number 9 pick full on bust. But it's situational, and I don't think that would have ever happened here in Sacramento, unfortunately.
What about under Doug Christie? That's something we were talking about earlier, is how would a player, especially in the circumstances of this year, a player like Davion thrived under Doug Christie?
No, it's possible. I mean, it is, but again, Doug was on that coaching staff for the last 3 years with Davion. So it's not like he didn't have some sort of say, well, not say, but some sort of at least input on what they thought of him as a player. And like, you can see it, like, some players they just don't fit the system. And it's the read and react. It's you guys remember the Mike Brown, you got to make a decision within 0.5 of a second of touching the ball. That's not Davion's game. He likes to ease into every possession. He likes to take an extra bounce here and there. And that's not what the system was supposed to be about. And that's where he really, kind of just didn't fit. And so, but that doesn't mean he won't fit other places, and we're already seeing it.
Well, I'll tell you this. Might put Davion in my Prize Picks lineup tomorrow, because playoffs are here, and you best believe every night, just like how people be like, oh, TNT every night, inside the NBA every night. No, your boy's going to have a lineup every night. I've got one tonight too. I'm going to post it on social medias, but 3 of the 5
Plural,
picks,
all the social medias,
3 of the 5 people on my lineup, demons.
Okay.
Yeah. Demons, man. So look,
I see
that's going to be there for everybody to see. Go to prizepicks.com, or, well, before you do that, download the app.
Well, you could do either. I hate this game.
Yeah, download the Prize Picks.
I hate this game.
Download the Prize Picks app put the promo code KIFM in there,
Yep.
and you get $50 instantly with your first $5 lineup.
Yep.
That's promo code KIFM to get $50 instantly with your first $5 lineup. You must be present in certain states. Go to prizepicks.com for more details. At that point, Prize Picks, run your game. Kyle is back. The man that started it all. Kyle is back. He's on the board.
No, Kyle is the one who hijacked the bid.
See,
he's like the second doink. He's not even the real doink. He's the second doink.
Well, Zabo, get it together because he's now only 3 games back.
3 games. Local guy got it right. He put the demon on there.
I see what you're doing. Big Drew. Yeah. But yeah, I should have went all demons, but just 3 out of 5.
I'm going Davion then.
Well, that's for tomorrow, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
I only got today.
Is everybody so happy for Davion, by the way? So happy for Bogey for like a year straight. Well, love seeing Bogey on the stage. All right, get out of here. Everybody happy for Davion. All right.
I'm happy for the dude. Yeah.
No, I'm glad everybody's happy that all the players at the Kings trade away are succeeding.
We happy for Marvin?
Great. Yeah, you happy for Marvin? Marvin got some minutes. Marvin might get a lot of run in this series.
Didn't he not miss a shot?
Did he?
That makes sense.
Started off.
I told you I had checked out by that point.
Checked out? When did I check in?
Well,
did he hurt his foot?
When did I check in?
I checked in when my mom said, "Do you need to watch this game?" Nope. Looks like it's over.
Someone's like tried sneaking that one into the chatty house. Oh, Kings missed out on that one too.
Oh, they did.
They were down 50.
Marvin back. Let me just see.
Playoff Marvin, lighten it up.
Marvin, a perfect 8 for 8 from the field, 1 of 1 from 3, 17 points,
guys,
5 rebounds.
He's finally figured it out. He's got it together. It's
he just
time
needs to make every shot.
It's Marvin's time and be down 50 so he can play. It is Marvin's time. You think the Kings? You brought up Kuminga and Moody earlier. It's funny. Kuminga, like I read a Brooklyn Nets thing this morning. Like I think it was from Mark Stein, if I'm not. Like it's a thing. Like it is a full on talking point around the league. Like what will the Warriors do with Jonathan Kuminga? Is that now? Obviously, there's going to be a market for him. I think this is going to be a pretty robust market this offseason. Can the Kings, with the assets that you laid out earlier today, can they get involved in some of this?
Well, I think he's a restricted free agent. Like they didn't sign him to a contract extension last year. He's in the same boat as Davion, same draft. So,
are we talking sign and trade?
Yeah, you're talking sign and trade. It's a better, or he can go sign an offer sheet somewhere. But the way the offer sheet works is if he signs an offer sheet, you can't trade him to that team.
Right.
Like you have to either pick up the whatever contract they signed him to, or you got to let him go at that point. So there's always a possibility for a sign and trade. But again, are the Warriors going to be a team that goes out and gets hard capped? And, or are they already in a situation financially where it doesn't really matter? We'll have to see.
They'll find some way to manipulate it and make it work.
Yeah, they always do. They should absolutely.
They still have Bob Myers like, no, do this.
Bob Myers was on the call on Saturday for the Nuggets Clippers, I think.
Was he?
Yeah, he was on a call. Who was he with?
The Nuggets Clippers? I know.
I don't think so.
He was on one.
I feel like I would remember if it was the Nuggets Clippers, but maybe
it wasn't, because it wasn't Knicks. It wasn't Lakers.
I didn't watch. I almost watched none of the Knicks Pistons game.
I saw the fourth quarter.
Okay.
Yeah. Trying to go up 2-0 tonight.
Yeah, we didn't talk. There's a couple games we didn't talk about, man. That Lakers Timberwolves game. Wow, you really
everybody talking crazy about Pistons, this, all that. Yeah, all right. Yeah.
All right. We're at the point where Kenny's acting like he's from New York. So we're just going to leave. Thank you so much for being with us. We're going to head over to 102.5 if you want to join us over there. If not, make sure you're tapped in tomorrow beginning at 10 a.m. with the Insiders here on Sacramento Sports Leader, ESPN 1320.
Vamos Knicks.